the majority of the people in power, they are the most deceived because they've been approached by these actual fallen beings that have presented themselves to them. To them, they are gods. Jesus himself didn't show up in the flesh before them. So they can see it, they can feel it, they can taste it. They're given real power, they're given real authority, they're given real money, real influence. They're being promised positions in the army of darkness eternally. Like they're basically being told that they're going to be made into gods, but really they're just pawns.
Hey, what's going on, y'all? Welcome back to JT's Mixtape. This is episode number 87. And if you guys are enjoying these podcasts, please give me a 5-star review on either Apple or Spotify. And if you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. Thank you.
Come closer, my child.
Well, family, once again, I'm your host, JT, and we're a little short-staffed today, but it's going to be a good show. I'm confident. We have Brian on location in Texas, which I'm going to be joining him shortly, but we do have Aaron Tunehart with us. What's going on, Aaron?
What's up, y'all? Happy to be here.
And so we're going to take advantage of the fact that Brian's not here to talk movies, because we know that what Brian would say about the movies, he'd automatically say they're satanic. But we're going to talk about one of my favorite movies today. And this is a teaser. We'll talk about some other stuff first, but we're going to talk about the gospel in Lord of the Rings and some of the stuff that Lord of the Rings reveals.
I love it.
Yeah, there's a lot to it. I saw this guy did a podcast and he was talking a lot about that, about some of the kind of embedded messages in the Lord of the Rings. And you guys can judge after you guys hear it. Again, Proverbs 13:18 or 18:13. Those who would answer a matter before they hear it, it's shame and folly unto them. So just wait till you hear before you judge. But Aaron, I'm going to give you the floor today. I'm going to let you share the first video, and maybe this might set the direction we go from here.
Oh, really?
You wanna do
Okay.
that? Yeah.
Okay.
I'm going to do you the honors as
A little bit of Russian roulette.
Yeah, the co-host.
Okay. All right. Gosh, where do we start? We've been talking a lot about alien disclosure, and we've talked a lot about that type of stuff over the last handful of weeks.
Yeah.
So I think I've got one that might be perfect.
So apparently, Elon Musk has been telling people for years that he's literally an alien. Back in 2018, he was like, I was an alien. In 2024, he was like, I keep telling people I'm an alien, but nobody believes me. In 2025, he was like, no matter how often I tell people that I'm a 5,000-year-old alien time traveler, they don't believe me. And to be honest, if you look at the nigga, he kind of does give off a weird vibe, like an alien type vibe. Like just look at him. You can't tell me that doesn't give you like a reptilian vibe. I don't know, what do you guys think? Is it a psyop? Or is this nigga actually a f***ing alien?
But I find it interesting that he continues to go hard on that. Like, he's not letting up from it. And he even went as far as to say a 5,000-year-old alien? And given what the new disclosure is, that aliens are really inhabiting human bodies and taking them over, aka demon possession, I think people should probably listen to what he's saying. I think people should probably believe him, that he's not exactly who people perceive him as. Everyone's caught up in the way aliens were presented to us and what they look like, and focused on the looks of an alien. And sure, he doesn't look like your average. I mean, he doesn't even look like most of your average South African men. but we got to get beyond looks and take a look at what he's done and what he stands for and what he's doing and what he's building and what he said about our new overlord that's being built in Memphis, Tennessee, and the correlation he made to Egypt. And there's just a lot there. I think we should probably listen to what he's saying.
Yeah, so I went to Grok. So this is, if you ever wonder if a tweet's real, you should ask Grok over on X, because that's their AI, because it can have access to all of it. And I wanted to make sure that those were actually real tweets by him. And it says, yes, Elon Musk has jokingly claimed to be an alien or a time-traveling alien multiple times on X. And so he lists the 3 tweets that guy mentioned. He's made similar lighthearted remarks in other threads, often in response to questions about aliens. SpaceX tech, which he sometimes calls alien level or sci-fi. These are clearly humorous bits, not serious claims. He also repeatedly said that he has no evidence of actual aliens. So he has said that, and that's an unusual thing to say. It's funny because we talked about a couple weeks ago about how Mark Zuckerberg famously said, "When I was human," and then he kind of caught himself. And so Elon Musk is saying, "When I was an alien."
Yeah.
But I do think it's important to recognize the way that the JT Follows JC podcast sphere, what our view is on aliens is we always leave room for some things we don't know about, but for the most part, we believe that aliens are demons in disguise. So when you say you're an alien, like, what does that actually mean? What does he actually mean by that? Because like the term alien just kind of really refers to somebody who's not from here. It's not saying you're a space alien. Because, it's funny, because that's back in the day, that would kind of be the nomenclature that people would use, space aliens. Because obviously people from South America who come over into America, they're aliens. Even I think biblically, depending on the translation you get, it calls foreigners aliens. So alien does not necessarily mean a gray, a Nordic, a reptilian. It doesn't mean any of that stuff. But they could mean that this person its domain, its original origin is from inside the earth. Maybe Sheol, maybe Shambhala or Agartha.
Yeah. Yeah. Or having inhabited a Nephilim body and being a disembodied spirit. So you would understand this better than me timeline wise, because you've done so much research on it. If we're following the biblical narrative, which obviously we are, of timelines, and we're nearing the 6,000th year of the earth being in existence, where exactly in Bible literature, timeline wise, would 5,000 years put us?
What's funny about that is that if you use the Septuagint chronology, it's different than the Masoretic. So this is a view that a lot of people have that are kind of premillennial people. They view that the timeline we're on is that we're approaching the 6,000th year. And so then, they correlate, a year is a day, 1,000, or to the Lord, a year in a day, or 1,000 years in a day is the same thing. So they're picturing like 6 days of creation. The 7th day after the 6th day is the 1,000-year millennial reign of rest. Now, in the Septuagint, it's really crazy. And I think I'm a believer that the Septuagint is more accurate than the current Protestant Bibles that we use.
I would have to agree.
So in the Septuagint, that between Abraham and Adam, there's an extra 2,300 years. Do you know that?
That's crazy.
2,300. Yeah, so I believe we're well after 6,000 years, even removing that potentially we have 1,000 extra years in the Dark Ages, or 700 extra years based on Gunnar Heinsohn's chronology.
So that would put us between 7,000 and 8,000.
Yeah, I guess I would have to really think about it. I know that I want to say in Second Esdras, it might even mention a specific prophecy about like the Messiah was going to show up around year 5200 or something like that, 5300. So if you think about it, like, we believe that whether you're in the little season or not, and you don't believe in any chronology hijinks, there's been either 2,000 years since Jesus, or there's at least probably 1,300 years or 1,000.
Which
1,300 to
we would lean more towards the 1,300
yeah.
years.
So we could be somewhere like between year 7,000 or year 6,500, based on the Septuagint chronology,
So if we go
and the idea that there's fraudulent years added during the Dark Ages.
So then, if we go 5,000 years back, would that put us right around the flood?
Yes, close.
So if all of that's accurate, he's essentially saying that he's from right around the time of the flood, which would make sense to correlate with the disembodied spirit of a Nephilim.
Well, yeah, true. And also talking about, quote unquote, alien tech, alien level tech. I mean, that goes right into what you've always said, is that everything that we have, like all the weird technology that we have now, the electronics, it's alien tech. It's angelic tech, watcher tech.
Yep. That it was always there. That it was.
I mean, it's
far
certainly
more
something
civilized.
that a lot of people, of course, that have podcasts like ours, we believe that those 13 bloodline families that are kind of, whatever you want to call them, the 13 bloodline families of like the illuminated ones.
Yeah.
Those people believe that their ancestors go back to Nimrod. They go back to, the things that happened before the flood.
Yeah, they'll try to associate themselves all the way back to Cain.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the truth be told, well, I would say biblically, I'm not exactly sure about, obviously the women in Noah's family, their lineages are a little more murky. We don't really know where they came from, but we know that on the male side, the patriarchy side, they go back to Adam. And then Cain's line was wiped out. Now, if the wives have remnants of Cain's lineage, but the patriarchs, like Cain's lineage ended when the flood came. Because Noah was a descendant of Seth. All his sons are descendants of Seth and not Cain.
Right.
But those people, obviously they don't believe the Bible's completely true, so they would probably say that they have receipts to go back to that. But do they?
Right. Where was he hiding? Where was his bloodline hiding out at during the flood? Like, was he a stowaway? Was someone from his bloodline a stowaway on the ship, or like?
Well,
what's going on?
I think in that stupid Noah movie with Russell Crowe, I think that what was it? Tubal Cain snuck on the ark or something like that.
I never saw it.
There's weird Jewish mythologies that Og of Bashan was from an antediluvian giant, and he like held on to like one of the ropes on the boat, and Noah made some kind of bargain with him. Yeah, weird stuff. I mean, the way the Bible hints at the sons of Enoch and them being related to the Rephaim, like the original Rephaim, it's confusing because if you read Genesis 6, 7, and 8, like literally about the account of the flood, it says that anything that breathed air was wiped out. Anything that was on the earth that breathed air was done. Now, obviously, that leaves room for other things, though. Maybe sirens and different things that were not necessarily terrestrially on the earth. Maybe things that, is it getting real technical, where things could have survived inside the earth during that time, could have hit out. But at the same time, if, again, you're following the patriarchs back, you still have to leave room that it says that the Nephilim were before and after, which I believe it's saying before and after the flood, when the sons of God came into the daughters of men. So if you have a patriarchy that descends from Adam to Seth to Noah and then afterwards, well, you could still have a different patriarchy that was inserted after the flood, where a fallen angel inserted himself back in there. And so then you have a different male patriarch that's actually not even human. And I think that's probably what these people believe.
Yeah, and I think it's not outside of the realm of possibility that there obviously were, if there was land dwelling Nephilim, there also had to be water breathing Nephilim.
Well,
Especially
right. You kind of wonder, like, is that where you get like the ideas of the way that Atlantis is depicted in like the movies and in kind of the fiction, where, if you go straight reading of the story of Atlantis from Plato, it doesn't leave room for like the city is underwater and thriving with some kind of dome under the water where you have the Atlanteans still living. But that's literally the story in the Marvel series with Prince Namor, and then in DC Comics you have Aquaman. So if you
Exactly.
watch like the new Aquaman movies with like Jason Momoa, yeah, there's still a thriving underwater city of Atlantis. So I think there is some room, there's some wiggle room, but again, this is not really into the patriarchy, but it talks about some of these women who sinned in the antediluvian times, and then they were changed into sirens. So how is would the sirens be killed by a flood? I mean, you wouldn't think so.
No, they would be thriving. And also if you consider that the possibility that what I believe that technology was, that we've devolved and that we were way more technologically advanced back then with the fallen tech that they came to Earth with, they would have known how to genetically reestablish the land-dwelling Nephilim after the flood. Like, they would have had the technology to do that. Like, just because a lot of them were sea-based at that time doesn't mean they're, like, we don't know anything about them. Like, it doesn't mean they're stupid. Doesn't mean that they couldn't function. In fact, I would beg to say that they were probably way more advanced than we could even comprehend.
Definitely.
The way that they would communicate, the way that they would, I mean, there's just so much we don't know, and there's so much that's fascinating. I saw a video the other day, and the reason I didn't bring it to share today is because it's so long, but it's so interesting that I'm pretty sure you would have been okay with us playing the whole thing. I think it's probably about 8 or 9 minutes, and it's worth every second of it. But the guy explains in it how there were maps up until a certain point of time, and then after this point in time, the maps were different. The land looked different. The land on these maps was like separated as if there was some kind of big earthquake. And on these maps at this point in time, they started depicting all of these crazy serpents and things in the water.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, before this time, none of those things were on any of the old maps. And then after this time, there were giant things on the maps, like giant, like serpent looking things in the water. And right around this time also, there were, I want to say it was as recent as the 1700s. And there were people, it was actually, because he was tying it to 1776 and 1777. And he was saying that he was sharing stories that were in magazines. Like, there's still publications that you can find that he shared. There were stories from all over the world that gave personal accounts of these giant serpents attacking boats.
Yeah, I mean, that's, again, we've talked about that a lot, is that the sea is associated with the abyss. The abyss is associated with the water that's under the earth, and that it's associated with Sheol, Hades. So the things that they believe were in the ocean could have literally come through portals or gateways from hell. And so, yeah, you have the idea biblically, you have the Leviathan, which kind of seems to correlate with that, because the way that Leviathan's described as seemingly an actual creature that God created in the book of Job. But then later, Leviathan is kind of used more like a spiritual thing when it's talking about Egypt and the association with that eventually this beast is going to be killed and it's going to be eaten by birds and everything. There's a lot there. You know what? I want to play this because I think this fits along with that, is that I've brought up a lot that the reason Brian and I created Ancient Angels is because I was really into Ancient Aliens back in the day. And so I saw this video and I thought this was kind of wish Brian was here to see what he'd say about this. But Aaron, you can chime in, tell me what you think.
I just want to say something about Ancient Aliens really quick. Guys, I don't want people to watch Ancient Aliens, and I'll tell you why. Because I'm a miracle worker. I pray for people to be healed of cancer, and I see spines straightening out, metal disappearing, and stuff like that all the time. I have seen so many crippled people that when I come up to them, I get a word of knowledge by seeing a UAP or a UFO disc over their head, and I ask them, do you watch Ancient Aliens? And they said, oh yeah, that's my favorite show. That show is a portal that imparts alien activity into people's lives.
Wow.
So I'm just trying to tell people, stop watching Ancient Aliens.
Right.
I know it's fascinating and we think we learn so much, but it's also a realm of impartation of alien activity.
So I'll just say I don't actually disagree with her.
What's going on, y'all? This podcast is brought to you by Modern Roots Life. Modern Roots Life is a Christian-owned and operated company, and it's bringing real health back to its roots. They offer powerful, all-natural health supplements such as beef liver, cod liver oil, beef tallow, magnesium, and mineral-rich salts, all sourced the way God intended. Clean, simple, and from the earth. So whether you're looking to boost your energy, restore mineral balance, or just fuel your family with real nourishment, Modern Roots Life has got you covered. Guys, in this community, we're trying to get healthy in our mind, in our body, and our spirit. So don't neglect your health. If you want more information, check out modernrootslife.com and check the link in my description. You know, people often ask me how they can support me. Well, I think it's pretty cool if you can support me by supporting the people who support me, and you get something in return. And being healthy is a pretty good return.
But it's a little more nuanced than that. And so I'll speak on behalf of Brian and myself right now when I say that what she's ultimately speaking to is our belief system. And when we believe in something, like if we believe something wrong about the character of Jesus, or about the character of Jesus and the way the Holy Spirit works, in a way that gives the demonic realm more power than it deserves, we're giving it permission. It's like a legal contract. It's like giving them legal rights. So for people that are seeking out the alien stuff and buying into it, and they're feeding into it, and they start to believe it, and they start to actually like see it as an anomaly, the way it's presented to us on TV, and they start to become curious about it and invite it into their lives and be open to it, it gives the demonic realm access to be able to kind of plague us and access us to a certain extent. Now, I believe that there are people that are protected by the Holy Spirit, because I think a lot of people are naively entering into it or just curious about it. But like, it also kind of forces you to go one direction or the other, like it did for you. You were interested in it. You were fascinated in it, but it led you down a path that went, wait a second, there's more going on here. Like this isn't exactly what they're presenting. And if what they're presenting is true, then it's got to go in this category, which would also mean this over here. So it forced you into the position that you're in right now, ultimately, but it doesn't do that for everybody.
Yeah, so that's why I think that, I mean, first of all, I don't believe what she's saying. I don't believe that she's seeing spaceships over people's heads.
Well, yeah, okay. Everything else, yes, but I don't know if she, like, whether she's seeing spaceships or not. I can't vouch for that. I don't see spaceships over anybody's heads.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, you could have, you know what they say, correlation's not always causation. So like, just because you had somebody who was demonized that happened to watch that show does not mean that is why they're demonized. Right? I'm sure there's tons of people who watch Ancient Aliens who love it, who do have demons. Now, do people get demons from watching the show? No, I don't think so. I don't think it works like that. I think that, yeah, it could add to somebody's belief system, but it's probably coming from somebody who's already got this belief system anyways. And so then, therefore, this person appears to be a certain way in IRL. So the show, to me, like, again, I always bring this back to when I was first watching it. You know, I grew up in a Christian church, so I never believed in aliens like that. I mean, I thought it was crazy that anyone did believe in aliens. I understood that when I watched the movies, I knew that this is fiction. And I know it's weird that it's comes up so much, but it's like when I watched the show, I thought it's retarded. The show's retarded. But when they make every conclusion about that, and they're reaching, bro. Like so often they reach to say, okay, this is these ancient peoples discussing aliens, when it's clearly that if you just listen to what they say, they're talking about gods and they're talking about giants. They're talking about all kinds of spiritual concepts that correlate with every biblical text or extra biblical text, all the mythologies around the world. They're not talking about things from other planets. Never. They never do that. Even like famously, Zechariah Sitchin said that these cuneiform tablets, these Sumerian tablets, mention Nibiru, where this is where the Anunnaki are from. It does not say that. Does not say the Anunnaki from other planets. They came from the heavens, just like they always say. So I think that Ancient Aliens, when I watched it, I thought it was interesting because this is before like TikTok. This is before we had access to all the social media where people were showing all these megaliths, and they're showing like the variety of them and all the different continents, and just it's so strange. Like we were never taught any of that stuff. So again, you have a very biased panel of people that they're always saying like, so what do you think about this? Well, could it be aliens that had something to do with this? So the conclusions are dumb, but their questions are valid. Like the questions about like, why are these things here? Like, what are these ancient hieroglyphs depicting? Like, what is this actually about? Those are valid questions. Who could have built this in a time that was supposedly, 2,000 to 5,000 years ago? Who could have built these megaliths? And so the science or the archaeology, the history does not really give us a good answer. So again, I think it's so I don't think it's much different than one of us watching a movie that we know is not a godly movie, but we know it's going to reveal something, so it gets you to get the gears in your head turning about, like, what are they telling us, and what do you think the actual truth is in this mess that's this movie or this TV show?
But see, I think a lot of it's heart posture. So like if you go into it watching it as entertainment, or watching it as a show of like, oh, what are they going to say now? And how does it line up with what I already believe? It's very different than someone that goes into it watching it that doesn't have the same belief system. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Someone that goes into
sure.
it like that doesn't have the same belief structure as us hasn't already chosen Jesus as their savior. And they're watching this and they're like, oh, and then they've now got this fascination for aliens and this belief system for aliens. And now everywhere they go at night or different times, they're looking out for spaceships. And they're wondering, oh, am I ever going to be visited by aliens? Why have I never seen it? Like their curiosity grows and it turns into something unhealthy. I think it's just another tool of darkness to plant seeds in unwitting and unsuspecting people that don't have a firm foundation. I guess that's all I'm really trying to say. But I agree with you. Like from a believer's perspective, if you watch it just like you watch any kind of sci-fi movie or TV show, you can watch it and you can easily like spit out the bones and be like, all right, well, that's trash. That's trash. That's garbage. That's stupid. But you have to, does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it makes sense. I think it kind of cuts both ways though, because we often talk about your belief and consent. So like if I watch Ancient Aliens and I think it has no power, well then it doesn't. It's like, it's like
100% agreed.
I'm not giving this show that much credit that it's going to be like be that powerful. So like almost in some kind of way, like her saying that might actually really be thinking like, oh man, there's really something to this show versus, yeah, like, but at the same time, like, yeah, I can see it strengthens your belief in this false narrative. Well, obviously that's very bad too. So you don't want to give like, you don't want to like, you don't want to give the enemy too much credit or more credit.
1,000,000%. That's always the case. Never give the enemy more credit than he deserves. He is the defeated foe. The work was completed on the cross when Jesus went and conquered hell and rose from the grave. You and I both know that. A lot of people know that. But it's like when it comes right down to it, I think I think it's safe to say that the average viewer, the average person watching that show, doesn't have that belief system. They don't have that faith. They don't have that strength. They don't have that firm foundation where they're viewing it that way. And so I think that what she's speaking to is the audience of people that watch it that are kind of unsuspecting. It's like, it's the easiest way to sneak right past someone's like interpretation of good and evil, right? For the people that are not interested in watching anything about that, but they're super curious about aliens and they're super curious about the sci-fi lore behind it all. It's such an easy way to slip right past those people's defenses and to implant a belief that is going to be ultimately dangerous for them in the long run. But I agree with what you're saying. I think we're saying the same thing. It really just depends on the audience and the heart posture in which they're coming at watching or choosing to believe the content of a show like that.
For sure. Okay, I've got another. Well, I got another maybe follow up, because I brought this up before that a lot of the UAP people, like the people really promoting that stuff, UFOs, aliens, and secret government programs, all this stuff. What they don't tell you is that these people are more than just like, I don't know, they tried to dress them up more serious than they are in public, where they go before Congress or they write articles about what their research says in the New York Times. Because I said I did a deep dive into ATIP or whatever, what the program was. And I forgot what it was. It might have been called like OSAP was like the original program. And so this is when the government funded all this research into UAPs. But what they also don't tell you about that, it's like the lies by omission, is that these people are all connected with this place called Skinwalker Ranch. So they weren't just looking for aliens. They were looking for Bigfoot. They were looking for skinwalkers. They were looking for ghosts and, werewolves and everything. I mean, it's crazy as it sounds. And like, did they find any of that stuff? Spoilers, no. They did not find any of that stuff. But I want to bring this up because I'm sure a lot of people probably have heard me say that, but they don't know what a skinwalker is. So there was a guy on Sean Ryan explaining to him what a skinwalker actually is. So here you go.
What is a skinwalker?
A skinwalker is a shape-shifting demonic entity. It's essentially a Native American witch or warlock that sells their soul in exchange for immortality, the ability to take on the skin or shapeshift, oftentimes in the form of a wolf, a dire wolf, or a werewolf-like creature, but they can also take on the shape of other animals as well. And it's a topic that I found the Native American community likes to stay away from. They don't like to discuss it. To even say the name Skinwalker is negative.
Okay.
And it's a key part of their cultural tradition and history. Skinwalkers to the Native Americans in the Uinta Basin are just as real as this chair, as this bottle of Diet Mountain Dew. It's a very real part of their cultural
Makes sense to me.
You know what's interesting about that is that I did mention, so in Disclosure Day, one of the points that I did find somewhat interesting in that movie, despite it being a terrible movie, was that these aliens do like kind of appear more like the slender grays or like just the regular grays, that they appear to these children in this movie or people later as animals. You know what I mean? So is it kind of like saying kind of the same thing as like these skinwalkers can appear as wolves, dire wolves, werewolves, but that's not really what they are. They are some kind of demonic entity. It's like, I don't know, the kind of way it sounds like to me, it's like that somebody sells their soul, right? And they're possessed and then they morph into some kind of an animal, right? But the way that, of course, the Steven Spielberg would present this is actually an alien from outer space that has the ability to shapeshift into a deer, a fox, a cardinal, you name it. I guess a dire wolf or whatever.
Yeah, and I think that we can kind of tap into something that Brian shared a while back, which is I think that the reality of it is what they're doing is they're projecting themselves to us as maybe they appear in the spirit realm. And they're using things that we're familiar with, right? Because we already know what those things look like. It's much easier to convince us mentally that they look like something that we've already seen before. We've already seen pictures and images of something or seen them actually in the wild than it would be for them to present themselves in their true demonic form, which would also be terrifying to most humans if we were to see them in their true demonic form.
Sure, you kind of wonder that with like the Native Americans, especially when they practice their spirituality, it often involves like a smoke session or they're doing peyote or some kind of
Yeah.
a thing. And like you wonder how much of this is them tapping into this astral simulation, this dimension, and then they're seeing things because that's the thing that there was this place called Skinwalker Ranch. And supposedly these people like who own the thing, like supposedly had encounters with all kinds of these entities all the time. And then eventually our government or somebody associated with our government bought it and nothing ever happened for like 5 years, like not one time. So like, it's like the vessel is you. And so what you see might be real per se, but it's not something that somebody who's not under the influence is going to see. You know, it's kind of like, I started to wonder this, like when the movies show like a story, like let's just say there's all these movies about like a demonic doll, like a Chucky, or just like the weird stories about this doll's possessed, and somebody comes into the room, the doll moves somehow. The doll's on the other side of the room, like nobody else is in the house, nobody else could have moved the doll, and then the person seeing the doll move, it's speaking to them, it's doing all kinds of weird things, coming at them with a knife or something. But then a lot of times in these stories, it's like not everyone sees it. Only one person ever sees it do it. You know what I'm saying? Where it's like, is this a situation where somebody has been possessed and they're kind of blacked out, right? And it's like they're the ones who moved the doll. It's not the doll that's speaking. It's like it's a demon speaking into their mind is what they're hearing. You know what I mean? So like just like in the same way Brian kind of described it, if people, we say they could be shapeshifters, but it's really only showing you a spiritual veil is being lifted from your eyes and you're seeing what maybe the spirit behind this person is. But you could have two people in the same car seat, watch somebody shapeshift, or one person could see it and the other person could say, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think
because
it has
it's not physical.
Right. Right. And I think it also has a lot to do with belief system. I think it has a lot to do with like where the power is aligned. Right. So for instance, if you hold the truth that Jesus holds the power and these other entities are trying to shake you up and trying to scare you, I'm not saying they can't do something to try to rattle your cage, but you're not in a position of being willing to just hand over that kind of power and fear to them. And so it's going to be a lot harder to break through to someone that has that belief system. Let me give you an example. So you passionately love your wife. Your wife out of nowhere says something diabolical to you, says something that like just is so mean and hurtful to you. That's going to impact you a lot more than if some random person on the side of the street, some homeless person, you're driving by and they say something awful to you. They chew you out and say the worst things to you. That's going to bounce right off your skin because they hold no power in your life. You know what I mean? They hold no power or value. It's not going to penetrate your heart or your mind quite like it would if a loved one did. So I think it's the same thing when it comes to like the power that those things have over us and what we see and what we don't see. I think it has a lot to do with what we're willing to see, what we believe in, what kind of power they have and what kind of influence they're going to have over us. Like, I'm not saying if a demon manifested itself and presented itself to you that you wouldn't be shaken a little bit. I think you'd probably be like, whoa, this is a crazy experience. But I also know that it would probably take you 2.5 seconds to call on the name of Jesus. before you whip the sword out and start doing spiritual warfare on that thing. Whereas the average person that doesn't understand the authority in Jesus, that isn't walking with Jesus, they may not come to that conclusion quickly whatsoever, and they're going to be mortified by that, and that experience is going to absolutely shake them. So I think that's going to be the difference between what we see and what we don't see. And so I think a lot of the people that just kind of walk in that truth, those are going to be the people that probably really don't see that stuff. They probably they really never witnessed that stuff, because those things really don't have permission to present themselves. They don't have the power or authority over those people. I don't know how it all works. That's just my theory.
Yeah, well, also what you're saying is true, that so if anybody in this audience who's watched the show at any length or Christian doesn't have to watch the show, they would know that if they encountered a demon, that they have authority in the name of Jesus Christ. So that is why that if a demon did show up, he wouldn't want you to think that he was a demon.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like, so you think about how all this alien deception does play into like the danger zone with regular people, because even Christians, even again, we brought up that story about that exorcist in the Catholic Church who was telling you that these are manipulative demons trying to pretend there's something that they're not. Because if you think about it, like, there's lots of power in the name of Jesus, and I'm not denying that it could do things to physical people, but let's just say like an attacker was attacking you, like you went to the bad part of town and you tried to rebuke somebody with a gun or a knife in the name of Jesus. Would that work? Well, I mean, it
Maybe.
could. I guess it could, but I guess it's likely that it wouldn't, right? Because this is a physical person attacking you, and of course, we know that people can be martyred who are speaking the name of Jesus. So, like, we know that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to save you. It'll save your soul, but it ain't saving your physical body. So that's why they would want you to believe these things are absolutely not spiritual entities. They're physical entities. They're aliens from other planets. And then so the name of Jesus is not going to help you in that situation. So you don't even bother using it.
So the association of power being mental in that situation, because they've sold us on the idea that these things are physical beings.
Well, you know, it's interesting. I want to switch gears a little bit, but it kind of goes into the same thing about kind of these different mythologies is vampires. You know, so like it's funny, and we brought this up, is that if you ever watch one of these vampire shows, it's real clear if you watch these old movies about that, they always bring in these exorcists or these priests, and they believe these people are possessed by the devil, or it's a devil, right? So like that's why in those movies, they show them a cross, they proclaim the name of Jesus, or they talk about the Son of God. And this causes these demonic vampires to recoil. And you brought this up too, is that somebody brought out a cross, and then the vampire was like, it only works if you believe it.
Yep.
To check this out.
In the summer of 1725, Ernst Frumbolt arrived in Serbia to investigate a string of deaths. His visit would produce one of the most bizarre government documents in European history. 9 people in the village of Kiseljevo had died in 8 days. The villagers had a suspect, a man named Peter Blagojevich. Their theory was airtight, except for one detail. Peter was dead. Still, every victim told the exact same story before they died. Not "I'm sick," not "ow, breathing hurts." 9 separate people, same experience. Peter Blagojevich came to them at night, laid on top of them, and choked them. Within 24 hours, all of them were dead. Peter's widow corroborated it. According to her, Peter had appeared at their door one night, asking for his shoes. They were probably Adidas. Villagers concluded that Peter was a vampire. Frumbolt did not share their enthusiasm. He was an Austrian imperial officer, a man of the Enlightenment. His job was to calmly explain that vampires were not real. Well, that didn't happen. The villagers dug up Peter's body. Frumbolt recorded what he saw. After 10 weeks, Peter had not decomposed. Beard and nails had grown, new skin, fresh blood at the mouth. But the strangest detail, there's no smell of decay. The report mentions other wild signs that he chose to omit out of respect. The detail that he was too embarrassed to write down: corpse had a boner, 10 weeks dead, no odor, blood at the mouth, and a rock hard. Some parts of the story are funny. The next part is not. According to several reports, Peter returned to his house and demanded food from his son. The son refused. The boy was found dead the next morning. So the terrified villagers took the first logical course of action. They pin-cushioned Peter's body with stakes. The report writes that Peter let out an audible groan. Fresh blood burst from his mouth and ears. But the part that still defies explanation, the blood wasn't coagulated. Blood normally clots within hours of death, but it flowed. After 10 weeks, in a body with no odor or signs of decay. This is, even by modern forensic standards, completely f***ing bizarre.
Well, how about that?
How about that? Yeah, the vampire mythologies are. I was doing a little bit of a dive into the Castlevania cartoon, like the anime series on Netflix at one point, because I really do want to believe, or I want to find out, where does this come from? Because it's so weird. I mean, of course, there's a lot of correlation, I think, between certain sects of people that might be nomadic, or there's this diaspora of them around the world, and they're blamed for blood libel. I do think that some of it comes from that. If you actually go into the medieval fables and mythologies about gosh, look at the villains in all these medieval stories about how they're depicted, what they look like, maybe what their noses look like, and I'll just leave that to you guys to go look into that. You'll see some Rumpelstiltskin and the witch in Hansel and Gretel, all that stuff. Weird stuff, because it's always about blood. It's always about children. You think about the wicked witches, why they look the way that they do. So I think there's some of that with the gypsies, kind of these people who kind of come into town and then they're gone. But then there's clearly a demonic association with them. I want to say that in the story of Vlad the Impaler, at least the way it's presented in the movies, he was this Christian, right? And he was supposedly fighting against the Moors. They had this battle between them. And supposedly a woman that was dear to him passed away. And then through that, he cursed God. And then he prayed to the devil for power to defeat his enemies. Did you ever hear that? That's the story of Dracula.
Yeah, that's insane. I'm sorry. I just, my brain was already kind of caught up in the thought of vampires when we were talking about the werewolves before, because I'm like,
yeah,
we're talking about Twilight. We're talking about Twilight at this point, right? We're talking about the werewolves or the wolves versus the vampires. And I was just thinking to myself, so the devil's not a creator. The devil is an impersonator. And so I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility that there are demonic powers that can reanimate a body.
But yeah, no question. Yeah, I think that's possible.
So it doesn't mean the person's still alive. It doesn't mean the person, but to reanimate a body, I think that is within the realm of possibility. And that kind of makes you wonder, why did the devil want the body of Moses?
Oh, yeah. That's a real interesting one. Yeah, I've brought that up before. If you guys are not aware, if you guys have not heard me talk about this. So in the book of Jude, there's we'll just read it. Let's pull that up and read it real quick, because it's a little short excerpt from Job. Oh, no, not from Job, from Jude. Okay, so the context of the book of Jude is he's talking about these people who are really rebellious and evil. And he's saying that, I'm going to start with verse 8. Yet in like manner, these people also, relying on their dreams, defile the flesh, reject authority, and blaspheme even the glorious ones. But when the archangel Michael, contending with the devil, was disputing about the body of Moses, he did not presume to pronounce a blasphemous judgment, but said, "The Lord rebuke you." It says, "But these people blaspheme all that they do not understand, and they are destroyed by all that they, like unreasoning animals, understand instinctively." So basically what he's saying is like that even the devil even the archangel Michael gave the devil respect by his position of authority, where he didn't even blaspheme him. So he's talking about like people blaspheming like God's holy angels. But yeah, the story goes that for some reason, like Jude brings this story up. And I think the book of Jude is very interesting because there's no chapters. It's just it's a very short book. And in that book, he references 2 books that are not in our canon at all.
Mm-hmm.
Because where does the story come from that Moses died and then the archangel Michael and the devil are fighting over his remains? And it also mentions that he also references the book of Enoch. But I did look this up. So there's a book called The Ascension of Moses that tells the story about that. Is that the devil, who's called in this book, he's called Samuel, and he's arguing with Michael over Moses's body. And it still doesn't tell you why he wants it, but he's basically saying, like, I'm the God of this physical world, and I can do with this thing what I want. And Michael was saying no. And yeah, like it eventually shows that Moses was like his spirit body was resurrected out of this body. It's really weird. I mean, Jude got that from someplace.
Right. And so it begs the question, what were his plans with the physical body? They couldn't have been anything good. I mean, think about all the deception that could have taken place if he would have had permission to reanimate the body of Moses. Oh my gosh.
There's some real interesting stuff because you think about it, like what's really interesting about when Moses does die, the Bible makes a point to say like that he's buried where nobody knows. Like, why did they do that? Because obviously all the other patriarchs, well, not all the other patriarchs, but typically the patriarchs were buried in places where they knew him. Like is Moses was probably the greatest prophet up to that point, I would say. But still, he's not the patriarch of Israel. He's, that would be Abraham. But they know where Abraham's buried.
Right.
Right. They know where David was buried. But Moses, for some reason, like they don't want to say where he was going to be buried because it was a situation where it could have been used like for idolatry, where they worship this old prophet. But then there's a story, I want to say when Elisha died, like when somebody fell on his grave dead and like they came back to life because they fell on like the bones of Elisha. That's
pretty
weird.
wild. That's weird.
That's a weird story.
But if we're running with that theory that the darkness, the dark forces have a way to reanimate bodies, they wouldn't be outside of the realm of possibility that there are people in our world right now, possibly in positions of power, who are literally not themselves anymore, that are currently reanimated by dark forces. They're no longer themselves. Perhaps people that have made statements in the past like when I was human. And maybe
or
they're
when I was an alien.
I'm just saying maybe they're no longer themselves anymore, and maybe what keeps them alive is something that we don't consume, that we would find disgusting, which is where the blood drinking and all of that other stuff comes from. It would just be so foolish for us to think that all of those stories from the past and all of the things that we know are true from the past, that they just stopped, that those situations just stopped because we're more modernized, because we're more civilized, because it's more hidden and maybe not as acceptable, and it's been taught to us as fairy tales and folklore. It's like it would be foolish to think that that stuff's not still continuing.
Well, the thing about vampires, especially the way they're depicted in the movies, they have romanticized them, and that's weird.
Totally.
So that's like, I think that leads some credence to the fact that maybe these beings are real and they do exist because, like, they're shown to be sexy in the movies. Like they're always associated with love, and I mean, because again, that's sort of what they're kind of telling you in that story where, Vlad the Impaler, who became Dracula, was like, he did it all for love because he was so in love with this one woman that he sold his soul to the devil for power. and then to defeat the enemies, take revenge, and then and all of, like Bram Stoker's Dracula, all that stuff is always about like that he's trying to woo this woman who looked like the previous woman. Maybe he's trying to incant some kind of a possession. It's kind of same thing in like the movie The Mummy, right? Like I think in the second Mummy movie, they try to get the the mummy whose name Imhotep is trying to get his old girlfriend and to possess this woman. Similar stuff, but you're like, so they're kind of presenting it like they are, they're doing all things for like a good reason because they love so much they'd do anything.
Right.
And then of course you mentioned the Twilight movies where it's all about that. It's like that this is supposed to be like romantic, but it's not romantic at all. These people, well, if this is real, these people are like undead. They're basically flesh covered demons.
Mm-hmm.
Because they don't really feel like they always have this longing. Basically what it's described in like the Pirates of the Caribbean about like the ghosts that are on those ships, about how they're always hungry, but and they can eat, but they can't ever satisfy their hunger. They're always thirsty. They can never
Tormented.
feel anything. Yeah, they're just tormented. And I think that's what's being described as a vampire, and it's exactly like a demon.
Well, and in Twilight, so you've got the wolves who are the Native Americans who live off the land. And then you've got the vampires, which are like the oligarchs and the ones with money and the ones with power.
Yeah, it's interesting, yeah.
And when you chase it all the way up, I think like the most powerful vampire family was in Italy or something like that and went back thousands of years.
Was it the Orsini family?
I honestly don't remember. I already know too much about that series, and I don't want to admit that. But
you want me to say, how do you know so much about the Twilight movies, Aaron?
Right? Oh, anyways, I digress. But yeah,
I've said too much already. No, but I do think that that's an interesting connection with that. The werewolves are associated with the Native Americans. Because again, that fits perfectly talking about skinwalkers, right? And then then the vampires, are associated with, again, that Vlad the Impaler historically is related to King Charles. And then all the kings in England are all related to basically the presidents of the United States. So they're all related to Vlad the Impaler. So it's all this high stock people, nobility, as you said. And I do think it's interesting to associate all of it with demons, bro, that they always show you in the movies. And I bring this up a lot, is that it's so telling though, that in every one of these vampire stories, there's usually a scene where somebody says the vampire's at the door and they're knocking and somebody answers the door and the person doesn't know it's a vampire, but it always makes a point to say, well, aren't you going to invite me in?
Exactly.
Because I can't come in unless I'm invited. So again, this is about consent. So they want you to think the vampires are sexy. They want you to see werewolves are sexy in Twilight. They want everything to be like where when you think about what one of these things is, Hollywood's put that spin on it.
They want you to want
suddenly
them.
Something that would be so evil and demonic. Like if there's any truth to that story about that video we watched, that would be something you'd want nowhere near you. But now here people are thinking, well, they are very powerful, right? So that's good. I think people like power. And they are lovers. So they're thinking, well, maybe there's something to gain from this.
And wealthy.
Like there's that show True Blood that was on HBO, and that's all about that same kind of stuff where it's this bargain where like you give up. Well, it's basically, again, they're undead. So you're not getting eternal life from them. You're getting this purgatory state, which is basically what the demons, I think, experience. Because their bodies are dead, but their spirits are just restless.
Exactly.
Forever.
So talking about oligarchs and money and history and power and all of this, I've got the perfect transition.
Why does European Parliament have a sculpture of what appears to be a reptilian creature holding a human household in a box? I'm just asking questions, but give me your thoughts on this exhibit.
What the heck?
Is that not crazy? Here, I'll show it again. Not the whole video, but I'll pause it on the, so there you see, I mean, it looks like Groot, doesn't he? And it's holding a box, and inside of this box, you can't tell it because it's kind of blurry. There's a family, and they're like sitting on a couch and they're watching TV.
Yeah, that's disturbing.
And that's literally inside of European Parliament. I'll play it again.
Why does European Parliament have a sculpture of what appears to be a reptilian creature holding a human household in a box? I'm just asking questions, but give me your thoughts on this exhibit.
Speaking of the EU Parliament building, you know what that building looks like, don't you?
On the outside?
Yeah.
I don't think I do.
Oh, check this out. I've got a JT classic from the archives here. Check this out.
That which has been is what will be. That which is done is what will be done. There's nothing new under the sun. Are you kidding me, EU? Nice tower you got there. Do you know how the story ends? Let's take a look at this thing. Did y'all know about this? Yeah, the godmockers over the EU actually built their own Tower of Babel. And they even admitted the design was based on the famous Renaissance painting by Peter Bruegel of the Tower of Babel. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, you gotta give them credit. It's pretty accurate. They really nailed that rebellion against God look. Good job, EU. But wait, there's more. That's right, the One World Government theme is continued by the artwork. Glass sculpture of the United Earth. And in case there's any doubters left, let's take a look at the poster for this monstrosity, shall we? And the one thing this building is not is subtle. Europe, many tongues, one voice, and 11 inverted pentagrams. Yikes.
I actually do remember seeing that video now. That's insane, dude. That's insane. And the inverted pentagrams?
Yeah, that was the poster that was somehow associated with the building. That they said, yeah, Europe, many tongues, one voice. And it's clearly a representation from that Peter Bruegel painting of the Tower of Babel, the classic look of it. I mean, it's the imagery with the Tower of Babel stuff is pretty insane. Yeah, Brian and I, one of the earliest podcast collaborations we did, we were talking about that Goodwill games where they had like the bull and the Tower of Babel stuff there. It's like that is totally just it's a symbol of rebellion against God, and there's just no doubt about it. So there's all kinds of other weird stuff in that EU Parliament building. You said, you see what the outside represents. It represents Nimrod and, like eventually them building a tower that ascends above the stars and the angels of God.
Yeah, dude, they're not playing with fire at all, are they?
Right, that's what I said. Don't you know how this story ends? Like, this is not like, if you do this, again, nothing new under the sun. Like, if you want to continue to go in this path, well, I can tell you how this ends. It's not well.
But what a lot of people don't understand, and it took me a while to wrap my brain around this as well, and that's that the majority of the people in power, they are the most deceived. Because
Sure.
they've been approached by these actual fallen beings that have presented themselves to them. And so to them, they are God. They are gods because Jesus himself didn't show up in the flesh before them. And so they can see it, they can feel it, they can taste it. They're given real power, they're given real authority, they're given real money, real influence. And so they're being promised positions in the army of darkness eternally. Like they're basically being told that they're going to be made into gods, but really they're just pawns. They're just like they're being completely deceived, and they're just pawns. And so it's easy to get confused about, like, why don't they know how this ends? Why are they doing this? But the forces of darkness they're still trying to overthrow God. Like,
well, it's a situation from Isaiah, the prophecy, and the same that Jesus reiterated when he came was that they're going to look, but they're not going to see. They're going to hear, but they're not going to understand. Otherwise, I would heal them.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the same thing. Like, well, how come Pharaoh didn't let God's people go? Because God hardened his heart. I mean, I think sometimes it is like that they made a decision at some point, and now like that they can't even choose right because their rebellion, their mind's been debased. It's like it's all been solidified, and so now God's going to use them in the other direction for his plan.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that makes sense. Do you want to see another video about maybe some new creepy architecture,
Let's see it.
like brand new? Yeah, brutalist architecture is just that. It's terrible. It's brutal. It's horrible. Let me see. Presidential Library. You'll see some of the pictures.
Man, they put some serious money into that thing.
Costs a lot of money to make that thing look this bad.
Dude, what in the world?
Like, why would you build a building with no windows in it?
Where is this? Is it in
This
Chicago?
is in Chicago, which I don't think that's it.
Yeah, that looks like a giant square. I wonder where they got the inspiration for the architecture.
I'm guessing a demon. I mean, I don't know what to say about it other than it's just like it's definitely got some evil layer vibes.
Yeah, it does. It's
And
kind
yeah,
of
this is all this chaos with all the words here. Guarantee there's some kind of code in there.
It looks like one of the buildings from Star Wars, like something the Empire would have had.
It almost kind of looks like, I wonder what the let me look this up. What did the Jedi Temple look like in Star Wars? Yeah, this is not quite the same, but maybe it's in the same way that it doesn't have any windows either. Where was Palpatine's presidential library?
That's crazy.
You know, the reason I bring this up because there's not anything. I mean, other than it just like it's got a creepy look to it.
It does.
But yeah, all the LED stuff inside there. Honestly, it's such a weird tradition where like Clinton got all this money for a presidential library, and of course, famously, they were fundraising and they were getting donations from all these foreign governments for the library and stuff in the Clinton Foundation. Like, why do we need some monument to them, to each president? They're supposed to be civil servants.
Well,
right?
I mean,
Isn't that kind of like losing the idea of like what a president's supposed to be? Like, we don't need this giant edifice while they're still alive. I mean, if you want to build a statue from their hometown or whatever, I don't think that's cool either. But that would be more understandable than to have like each one get their own idol, their temple.
Well, it speaks to the pride and the like they want us to see these people as deities.
Mm-hmm.
That's really what it comes down to. And I think it's quite possible in the occult world they are seen as deities and perhaps even overtaken by an actual deity.
Sure, like Osiris. But the interesting part is, I remember I brought this up before that I watched this old show on the BBC. Man, I'd like to find it so I could post it for the just do like a community post for it. But it was really interesting. It was just talking about the idea about how architecture makes you feel a certain way. And it was basically contrasting the brutalist style that was built after World War II versus like the colonial style and just like maybe the old world style. Why do we find this so aesthetically, like there's something, it's like it's inspiring the human spirit, where brutalism is repressing it.
Mm-hmm.
Like we all feel it. Like when you come to a building like that, there's a vibe and it ain't a good one. These people know that. Like they obviously know that.
Yeah, it's intentional.
I'm actually surprised that it wasn't recreating some kind of temple to Zeus, based on like, remember Obama when he was first gave his speech in front of like the DNC, didn't they have like all the pillars and stuff depicted like it was like Zeus's temple?
Well, I don't remember, but I am also surprised that they didn't use that opportunity to use more symbolism in the way that it was built. It did feel oppressive. it felt, especially like the inside, it felt very Hunger Games-esque.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, when I guess at the DNC, he gave this speech here, and people made all the connections. Like this, they did like all the Roman pillars and stuff. Like this is some kind of temple.
Interesting. Dude, look at all the people watching him. That's insane.
Yeah, cult of personality, big time. I don't know. I just thought that was interesting. You know, you did bring up that you said that these vampires had some kind of origin in Italy. Well, I do have an interesting video about like monster edifices in Italy, and also this very, maybe say, infamous or maybe famous family from Italy.
This picture was taken in 1952 of the shepherd tending his sheep in this sacred grove that has sat abandoned for 350 years in Italy. So this massive face statue has sat in this wooded valley bottom beneath this very large castle, Castle Orsini, which is one of the largest castles in Italy, in this area called the Gardens of Marzo, sometimes called the Park of Monsters because it has all these grotesque statue things. In the 1500s, this specific face was commissioned by Pier Francesco Orsini to cope with the loss of his wife, and this sculpture is supposed to depict the Roman underworld god Orcus. But after Pier Orsini's death, his descendants looked at his garden and decided it was just like the creation of a madman, and they had no interest in maintaining it, and they just thought it was really surreal and had a lot of cryptic statues, and so they abandoned it for nearly 350 years. And it's just crazy to think that there was such a cool place with so many cool creations that was just being swallowed by vegetation and was forgotten for so long, just used for livestock grazing.
Yeah, that dude was channeling some serious demonic energy with those sculptures. That's insane. I've never seen those before.
Yeah, I once shared one of those on my Facebook feed saying our history's a lot weirder than you were told. Supposedly those things were done in the 1500s. And so, okay, are you getting I mentioned the Orsini family when you were talking about like if any kind of vampire origin. Well, just hear what he said in that story was that his wife died and then he built that grotesque statue,
To grieve
tunnel,
her?
cavern, or whatever for the god of the underworld Orcus, which interesting. Like I've never heard that name of that deity as far as like Greek and Roman mythology. You would have thought it would have been, I mean, obviously there's multiple gods of the underworld, but what you have, what's his name, is like the guy who's the boatman on the river Styx. What was his name? Gosh, I forget his name. But obviously you have Pluto or Hades, you know, depending on, I guess Pluto and Hades are the same. Those are like the gods of the underworld. So who's Orcus? It's kind of interesting, like orca, like a
Exactly.
orca, like a whale, like a killer whale.
That's what it made me think of. Was an orca.
Yeah,
which is wild because they both kind of are underworldish.
Yeah, let's see. The River Styx ferryman. Oh yeah, it was Charon. Charon is the River Styx boatman. So what's up with that though? So like the wife dies and you build that. It's kind of reminds me of, I don't know, like the story of Dracula. Like his wife dies and then he sells his soul to the devil. Sells his soul to the devil to become a vampire.
Yeah, well, it's almost like he knew exactly where she was going, and so he wanted to pay tribute or build something as an ode to that god in the underworld, so that, I don't know, so what, she would have safer passage or something. I don't know. I don't even want to know how all of that works. That's just so freaking weird.
Yes, it's really dark, but again, it's like this is such a stupid story, like altogether. Like, I don't know how much of this is true. This was done in the 1500s and it was abandoned for 350 years. It's like people didn't know about it. Like, you know, that's kind of the vibe you get, is like this thing was lost, like everything else in this realm at some point was lost. And then they assign a date to it, they assign a story to it, but is that exactly what actually happened? I don't know. I don't know if I believe it. But let's shift gears entirely. Well, maybe not entirely. I've got two funny ones, and then we can get to some Lord of the Rings stuff. My favorite.
All right, let's do it.
My favorite part. But yeah, this one has something to do with, I told you, like, everybody's been trying to really push this idea that aliens are coming soon, right? Like, I mean, something's coming to a head soon. We're not the only ones who believe that. Check this out.
Weren't the aliens supposed to show up by now? I thought these aliens are supposed to show up by now. Dang it. I thought these aliens were supposed to show up by now.
That's actually hilarious.
We know it's going to be a psyop, but like we thought it would have been by now, right? Like we were thinking maybe something by now, right?
So this is just take it or leave it. These are my thoughts. I don't think that's ever going to happen. I don't think the blue beam, I don't think it's ever going to happen the way people have been expecting it to happen, even the conspiracy theorists. What I think is that Disclosure Day, the movie, was their literal disclosure day. I think with the release of Disclosure Day, they were basically giving us everything they're ever going to give us. And the reason I say that is because things have shifted since Disclosure Day came out. Have you seen some of the recent commercials that they've been playing during the World Cup?
I don't watch TV like that anymore, so no,
I don't either.
I
don't either, but I saw them on TikTok and I didn't save them because I honestly don't want to glorify them, and I don't want people to see them. But I'll describe a couple of them for you. In one of the commercials, there is a family inside, all adults. They're all watching the World Cup. And outside are all of the children. And the children are surrounded by snakes. And the snakes are wrapping themselves around the kids and literally offing them. And one of them has itself wrapped around the child's face completely to where the kid can't see at all. So all of the children are being attacked by snakes outside while the parents are inside busy mesmerized by the World Cup. To the extent that one of the men inside, he's got a snake wrapped around his neck, like a venomous snake, and it bites him in the neck as an injecting venom. And the guy's still just watching the World Cup as if it's not happening at all. And dude, that's so telling. There's another commercial, an Apple commercial, that shows like a woman sitting on a bench.
I think I know what you're talking about. You're talking about the one that the data tracker's actually got that queued up if you want to play that.
Dude, yeah, we can show that one.
Excuse me. Who's that?
Online data tracker. Follows me everywhere I browse.
Ooh, Chrome.
Yeah, so you were talking about this one scene right here. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, so I don't know what ancient painting that is, or if they painted it just for this, but this woman's reading a book and there are literal demons hovering over her, getting gratification from enjoying whatever it is she's reading. It's very clear.
The funny part about that is that I saw somebody share that still on X, and I thought, dang, this is super demonic. Is this real? But I gotta say, the way that it's presented in this commercial, I would say based. I think that it's presenting it like, because what it's presenting is that it's associating the data trackers with demons. So
Right.
it's like it's not glorifying these things. It's actually pointing to like the data trackers that are tracking every movement you make over social media and your internet history are demons.
Right. So, but what I think that they're doing, I think it's disclosure. I think that's their way of telling us that this is what's taking place. That the demons and the demonic realm is feeding off of everything that we do and watching everything that we do. Every
Mhm.
word that we write, the people that we're talking to, the things that we're watching, observing, and feeding off of that. And the idea that by using Apple products, specifically Safari, that they're going to save us from all of that is obnoxious. Like,
Right,
it's
exactly.
obnoxious. So, like, again, a little bit of truth and a lie. Like,
It is interesting that they're presenting them with the chrome jumpsuits where it's almost like clear association with the demons, and then is this like an alien type thing with the
Yeah.
chrome,
they're rewrapped for our
outfits.
generation. They're rewrapped for our generation to be more palatable. But they're ultimately showing us how it all actually works in the demonic realm. And that's, and it's like, if anyone has ever been, so when you're caught up in an argument with someone and you're texting, if you visualize a demon right behind you feeding off of that energy, that rage, that hate, if you're having a lustful conversation or watching something that creates lust or envy or whatever, the idea that there's a demon behind you feeding off of all of that and driving that and stirring you and pushing you, that goes hand in hand with the way that the enemy tempts us and
Mhm.
tempts our flesh and pushes us. So what I'm trying to say is, I think these commercials are absolute disclosure of the demonic specifically. And commercials like these weren't coming out before Disclosure Day. I'm just saying.
I don't know about that. I think that they've always had really demonic commercials.
But when they're showing us their playbook, though, when they're showing us like the
Yeah, but
reality
they've
of
always
what's
they always
actually
kind of do a
happening,
little bit. I guess they've always kind of shown us. I mean, so if
it's been
you're
so subtle though until now.
if your
Those are
main
my
point
thoughts.
is that all this was leading to that crappy movie, it's even more disappointing than I could ever imagined. That movie was so bad. And like, I don't know, like I said, because if you kind of have to see the movie, I'm telling you, it's like there's a lot less involved in this movie than more. I just don't know that, again, this movie is one brick in this wall of all the stuff they've been pushing out over the past year. But I thought it would have been more of a foundation for something else, but it seems more like it's one more thing. It's not any more, I wouldn't say it's any more pushing this message forward than any other movie about aliens that they've shown over the last 15 years.
I hear what you're saying, but hear me out. My perspective is that's also coming from someone that's researched and studied an enormous amount of stuff over the average person. Like, you're not the average person when it comes to the amount of information you've consumed about these things, also with a heart posture that's towards Jesus. So like, your foundation is firm, your heart posture is set, and so you're not affected by these things. What I'm saying is, I don't think Disclosure Day was about the movie. I don't think they were trying to create a masterpiece. I don't think they were trying to create a fantastic movie that everyone was going to love. I don't think they care about the ratings. I don't think they care if it makes money. I don't think it was about any of
Well,
that.
they did. Based on the movie, I would say that all those things are true.
I think that it was literally created as their way of saying, we told you guys. It's out.
Well, we shall see. We'll see if anything else comes about. But I would say that for the most part, I'm kind of like with the one guy. I thought that they would already be here by now. At least the PSYOP.
But hold on. On that note, though, I'm not comparing them at all to Jesus, but everyone was also expecting the Messiah to be different. And no one believed that he was here. And so for everyone that's like, I thought they would be here by now, I think it's very clear that they are. And they have
Yeah, well,
been.
they're already here. That's why we say that they're demons because they've been here for a long time. A long time.
And everything points to that. People aren't seeing it. They're not making the connection.
Well, because they're looking for them to come from outer space
and be green.
But they're already here. And they've been here since before the flood.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got another funny one, and then maybe we'll get to some Lord of the Rings.
Hello, and welcome to This is the Stupidest Thing I've Ever Seen. Yes, that's quite a competition. But I think I found a winner. Like, guys, I'm excited about how stupid this is. From who else but Balenciaga, these are a denim pants top. Original retail, $2,516. And if you're thinking, it will look less stupid on a person, I bet you feel pretty foolish right now, don't you? And if you're thinking, okay, so the front just looks like a pair of folded over jeans, but you know what? I bet the back has some interesting detailing to it. Oh, hold your horses. Because no. It is literally a pair of jeans. Sewn shut. That's it. That's it. That's it. The genius of this product is in getting an idiot to pay for it. That is the genius of modern Balenciaga.
Yeah, there's nothing new there. That's far from the dumbest thing they've ever made. Have you seen their yellow bags that they sell?
No.
Bro, pull it up right now.
Okay.
I don't even want to say anymore. I want people to just see it. Let's just say that they sold some very expensive fashion bags that were very simplistic and yellow, and this is not a joke.
I'm sure you're probably talking about this one right here.
That's it.
Oh, gosh, it's a grocery bag.
It is a grocery bag.
Those are the kind that you need to double bag something because it will surely rip.
Look how much they're selling it for.
$1,790.
This is real life, dude.
You know what it made me think of when I'm watching that? And I'm not sure exactly how this would work, but it reminds me of like how, somebody in some art gallery tapes a banana to, the wall and it sells for like $1 million. It's money laundering when it's art, right? That's almost what it feels like for this too, because I don't think that anybody is really thinking I would slay wearing those jeans. Because you could make your own and they would look just as horrible. So you're going to pay $2,500. I mean, luckily they're running a sale and they're only about $900 right now. So like maybe now's the time to get them. Or maybe you could even convert them back into jeans. You could just cut the thread that ties them together. But like that seems like money laundering.
Dude, I'm not even mad at them. They found a way to take money from people that are willing to give it to them over something so dumb. And these people are willingly parting with their money that they have to get these dumb items. And so it's like, they're not forcing these people to do anything. They're presenting them with an option of something so stupid. They have to be sitting back. They have to be sitting back and just laughing their freaking butts off. Going, what stupid thing can we make next? And see if these people are willing to spend money on it. And then they go and spend money on it and they're like, sure enough. And then you see people on TikTok. You see people on TikTok and other platforms that and I'm not trying to be mean, that they're kind of struggling in life to make ends meet. But they find a way to get the money to buy some of this Balenciaga merchandise. And it's the spell, dude, is so strong. And I don't get it, but I'm just being honest. I don't really feel bad for the people that are parting with their money for these things.
No, they say a fool and his money shall shortly be departed.
Yes.
Right? Shortly be separated.
Yes.
Yeah, that's certainly one of those situations. It is funny. I did watch a video, and I almost brought it to the podcast tonight, but I'll just say the message. But it was talking about art, and it was talking about there was a time where like art brought people closer together because it was all centered around beauty.
Yeah.
Like because I think most people, everybody's got their separate tastes for things, but we can find things aesthetically beautiful, and we can appreciate like a beautiful painting, a beautiful song. Yeah, and during like modernity, with like modern times, the way that things are associated, that artists started to try to make something different. So they were trying to separate themselves from other artists. So they would create grotesque things, weird things. And so it's doing the opposite. It's creating confusion, and it's pulling people apart, because now people can't, like, that's supposed to be art. And so that's what it seems like, where, we brought this up before about like the fashion industry, and Balenciaga is a perfect example of how satanic and weird it is. And, the Balenciaga, all the stuff that, from a couple years ago, when their ad campaigns are just totally demonic. That when you watch these fashion shows, back in the day, it was like beautiful models, male and female models. Like they would be modeling like really nice, cool clothes that you'd want to wear. You probably wouldn't want to pay the money for it, but like you could appreciate what they were doing. And then later they're like wearing trash bags, or they're wearing bizarre outfits, like things like that, where they're wearing jeans as a top. It's satanic. It's satanic because it is like that our God is a God of order. And what the devil does is he flips things on its head. And so if God established things with a beauty and order, he's trying to do the opposite. It's all about ugliness and disorder.
Yeah, inversion.
Yeah,
it's all about inversion. It's all about taking what was meant to be and distorting it into what it was never meant to be, taking beauty and bastardizing it, and male to female, female to male, like all of their religion is inversion. And all of the things that were supposed to be pure. I mean, look at the way lust has overtaken the culture, and the sexualization of things in culture is like one of the things that was meant to be the most beautiful, Holy Spirit filled things between a man and a woman, a husband and a wife, has been turned into a multi-billion-dollar industry. So yeah, that makes sense when it comes to art, especially. It also kind of has like the Mr. Beast aspect to it, where everything's been done. So like what's the solution? More extreme, become more extreme, more in your face, more crazy, more extreme. He just throws more money at it, more people, makes it bigger, makes it crazier. And it works. Unfortunately, that's what people want to see.
Well, it's about shock value. It's like being shocking is different. So then that's where they can continue to keep pushing that boundary. But anyways, let's get into some Lord of the Rings, shall we?
When Sam and Frodo are in Mordor, there's still a whole way to go, and they're outnumbered and exhausted, and the ring is getting heavier and heavier, and suddenly Sam starts reminding Bilbo of the great stories. And he says, all those people were in dark and desperate places as difficult as the one we're in now, but they didn't give up, and it wasn't the end of their story. Do you suppose we might be in a story, Mr. Frodo? And I'm going, I'm reading this as a teen. I'm going, yes, you are, I'm reading it. Don't worry, guys, it's not the end. Like, this is my second read through, it's going to be, But the idea, of course, if you're a reader and a character in a story you're reading says, do you suppose we might be in a story? You've got to say, whoa, do you suppose I might be in a story?
Someone reading about me?
And that idea that, God is speaking us into being, telling this great story of creation, fall, and redemption, and resurrection, and renewal. And he himself is embodying and enacting it in Christ. And then he lets us not admire the hero from afar, but actually be part of the story, literally in Christ and Christ in us. That's an astonishing thing. And I think for somebody who's felt they've fallen out of any ever good story there was, and that there's no connection, no thread in their life, no meaning to the random pattern of just stuff happening. If you knew there is a story.
He's right. I think everything changes in this life and in this world when you realize that all of the stories So that was one of the things that happened to me when I started going through my awakening, so to speak, my awakening. When you hear about all of these things happening with the blood and just and all of these awful things, Scripture tells us that that was what they've always done. Like, you go back to the ancient Babylonian times, it's like that is the world we live in. And then you realize that all of that stuff is true. All of that stuff is real, and that it's all still taking place. Like, we are in that story. I think that's one of the ways, if not the way, that we should see all of this, that we should see this life and this journey that we're on.
Yeah. So of course, that scene in The Two Towers is one of my favorite scenes, is when Sam's talking about like these great stories that they were told, and about how people had a lot of chances to turn back and quit. But it's the difference between like a story and a great story is that they didn't turn back. Despite all the obstacles, they still overcame. And if you think about it, like when you do put it back into like the gospel, well, the gospel of Jesus Christ is the greatest story that's ever been told. And so like if we're in him, like it is interesting to kind of think about your life like that, is like that. So you're living part of the greatest story that's ever been told. Like, because our connection with the King and God's Son. And if you think about it, like there's so many different challenges we go through in our own lives. And if you think about it like that, we're living that story, and like we have opportunities to continue to press forward. And if we turn back, you know what I'm saying? Like this is our opportunity to do something that could be great, something for God's kingdom. And I thought, man, that's a really cool way to see that, is that, you know, like Tolkien, I believe he did put a lot of the stuff from the Gospels in the movies and things that were real. And but he's not putting it so much in your face.
Yeah, for sure.
Like he's putting hints of it. And this is why like all these secular people can really enjoy this story, but like they're getting a message that I do believe is good. Even there was another video that I did not save for today, but I'll just describe it, was that Tolkien's Lord of the Rings is such a flip on like the typical hero's journey, because typically it's about them going to find some kind of relic that's really valuable or of power. They're looking for it. But so in the Lord of the Rings, they already have it, but they know it's corrupting. So they already have the power, and it's about sacrifice at the end. They have to go destroy it, because it's like inherent that humanity can be corrupted by this powerful thing. So eventually they have to go destroy it.
Yeah, and another example being Frodo being the tiny, humble, unlikely hero of the story, not having the pride of the normal hero, or even the stature or strength or literal power. It is an ode to our story, and it's empowering to the average person to realize that real strength does come from Christ within us, and from meekness and humbleness, and not everything that the world tells us is real power. So yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why I've always been so drawn to that story, in addition to so many other things.
Yeah, well, you would think that if it was a typical hero's journey story, it would have been Aragorn who would have took the ring to Mount Doom and threw the ring away, or maybe Legolas.
Right.
It'd have been somebody who was more powerful, who had more ability, but they picked the unlikeliest person to do it. And here's another video about the connection between like the idea of Frodo, what Frodo learned on this journey.
If Frodo had thrown it in, it would be Frodo's triumph over the ring, Frodo's triumph over sin. But Gollum emerges. Why is he there? At the beginning of the story, Frodo says, I wish Uncle Bilbo had destroyed that miserable creature when he had the chance. It's a pity that he didn't. And Gandalf says, pity? It was pity that stayed his hand. Then later in the story, Frodo has the chance to destroy Gollum, to have Gollum killed, and he says, now I do see him, I do pity him, and he spares him. And later on, Sam also pities him. So 3 separate occasions, the 3 hobbits have triumphed in the most important way of doing the will of God, and the most difficult commandment that Christ gives us, to love our enemy. and they all succeed in loving their enemy, and because of that, their enemy is there at the end. If they killed him, he wouldn't have been, to deliver everyone from the enemy, right? So again, acts of love, acts of obedience to the commandments of God, laying down our lives for not just our neighbors but our enemies, is the way to defeat the power of evil. Love is the only way to defeat evil, not hatred, not violence, love.
Beautifully said. I love that. That's absolutely the case.
You might, like, that would be easy to miss, is that Frodo, before he learns, he thinks that this creature deserves nothing but death. But then later he learns that it was the ring that corrupted him. So basically, sin has corrupted this being. And then he's realizing that he's being corrupted by it too. So he wants to believe that there could be redemption for him. And I do think about it, and I often bring this up, the story that Jesus tells about the unforgiving servant, is that you need to be forgiven. Well, you've been forgiven, so you need to forgive. So like we don't want to give up on people. So like it's through that, it's the idea that he doesn't pass judgment on him, Gollum, even though he deserves it. But the truth is, like in the story of, the unforgiving servant, everybody deserves judgment. So we don't want to be the ones to pass judgment. We want more forgiveness. We want more grace for people. And I thought, man, that's a really interesting story, the way that it's told there, where it's, like I said, it's so subtle, but it's like it's right there. It's telling you that story.
Yeah, well, exactly. There's a lot of layers to that. I mean, the main power of Jesus is his love for us, and he died for us because of his love. But I don't think people often associate forgiveness with love. And what you're talking about, the same measure of forgiveness that we give is that which will be applied to us. And so it's so important for all of us to remember that none of us deserved that sacrifice. None of us deserved that level of love. And part of receiving that love and that forgiveness is to offer that same love and forgiveness to everyone, no matter what. And there's power in that forgiveness and in that understanding. And that is real love. And in the end, like he said, because of their understanding and their forgiveness towards him for that treachery and the understanding that ring overtook him the same way that it was trying to overtake all of them. They could have been him. All of them could have turned into him, especially the hobbits, because he once was a hobbit. And so they were able to see it all play out. And in the end came a Romans 8:28 moment where all things were used for good. And he did get death because he chased that ring to the last second. I mean, even as he was falling into the lava, he was lifting it up and holding it up because that's what he worshipped. But their obedience kept them safe in the process. And yeah, Frodo lost a finger because he got really close to danger. And I think that's one thing that's important for us to understand as believers. And that's the whole, no weapon formed against us thing. Like, yeah, that's true. But I don't know how true that is in terms of our physical bodies. I don't know if that's speaking more to our souls and our spirits being unable to be harmed and unable to be hurt. I do think that is literally translated towards us physically, but that doesn't mean we're not going to lose a finger, before it's all said and done in this battle, because it gets pretty rough sometimes.
Well, there's consequences to the sin, like that eventually that the ring did turn Frodo. So like your soul can be saved, but you can still face discipline and judgment here.
For sure.
Because of missteps. We often bring up the King David story, is that David sinned with Bathsheba and he killed Uriah, and he was forgiven, but he still faced turmoil in his family the rest of his days.
Yeah.
So that's something he had to live with here. So yeah, there's still consequences to sin here, that even though God forgives you, you kind of did make your bed, so you're going to have to lie in it.
For sure.
But yeah, that's good too. Even the story of Aragorn is that Aragorn understood that just like his ancestor Isildur that he's related to, that he succumbed to the power of this evil ring. And so Aragorn was mindful that the same blood flows in me that was flowing in him, who was corrupted. So like he was aware. So it's kind of almost an understanding of like your own sin nature that yes, you could be corrupted, and being mindful of that, because we are flawed, just like he knew he was flawed. So there was acknowledgement of that. But for all the good messages that we can pick out of Lord of the Rings, it seems like the elites in this world are picking out all the worst ones. Have you ever noticed that? Check this out. There's a good video about that.
By now, you might have noticed that some of the most powerful companies in the world are named after objects from Lord of the Rings, and most of them miss the point of the books. Palantir Technologies is a surveillance and data analytics company whose original clients were U.S. government agencies. In the books, the Palantiri are very powerful tools for seeing across great distances, but Tolkien's entire point was that they corrupt their users. Anduril Industries is a defense technology company that builds autonomous weapon systems and AI-powered drones. It's named after Aragorn's sword, Anduril, or Flame of the West. In the story, the reforging of the sword symbolizes the rightful heir stepping forward to serve his people. In The Lord of the Rings, mithril is a lightweight, nearly indestructible metal mined by the dwarves of Moria. It's also the name of Peter Thiel's venture capital fund. You might remember that in the books, the dwarves' obsession with mithril and their refusal to stop digging is what awakens the Balrog and destroys their entire civilization. Another interesting one is Narya Capital, J.D. Vance's venture fund. Narya is one of the 3 elven rings of power. It's the ring of fire worn by Gandalf. The elven rings were forged to preserve and protect, not to dominate. Gandalf uses Narya to inspire courage in others, never to control them. The reason the ring works is because he's not seeking power for himself. There are lots more, like Lembas LLC, Rivendell 1 LLC, both entities registered to Peter Thiel, Thelos, which is now an AI healthcare billing platform named after a healing plant, and there's literally a company called Sauron, which is an autonomous home security system named after the all-seeing Dark Lord. Tolkien himself was a philologist and a devout Catholic. He hated industrialization. So while Silicon Valley has seemingly used the Lord of the Rings content as a toolkit, Tolkien actually wrote it as a warning.
So the question is, was Tolkien prophetic, or are these people just misappropriating?
I think they're misappropriating. Again, like I know that Brian, if he was here, he would say that Tolkien was in the Inklings, he was in a secret society, and he's putting this stuff in there to, I guess, normalize it. But I don't know. I think that the story, I think again, the core message, I think is too powerfully on the right path, because obviously the Palantiri is used today as some kind of surveillance system, but yeah, like the way it's presented in the book, it's like that you're using this technology to see into the future and to see in different places, but ultimately this is going to corrupt you, because the origin, the source of this is evil. Which again, if we're talking about earlier about alien tech or demonic watcher tech, that's certainly what it is. I mean, what about the one where it's like there's some kind of security company called Sauron?
That's insane.
Why would you hire them?
Unless you're just diabolical. I mean, unless you're I don't know what's even the word, man. What is like, unless you're a villain on purpose and you need the help of other villains to help you stay.
Yeah, no, I mean it's crazy because it is so right in your face, and it's funny like how I'm so into these movies, and like the older I've gotten, the more I've got into them. But then these technocrats, these tech billionaires, they're obviously into it, but they're seeing the wrong part of the story. And as you said, like these people are the most deceived, because how does it work out for Sauron in the end? How does it work out for Saruman?
Yeah.
Using the Palantiri. Like how does that work out for them? We know how the story goes, and we know biblically, again, this is the greatest story ever told, and it's like only through Christ can you have victory. But then people are still going into the Egyptian mystery schools or Babylonian mystery schools, and they're seeking this knowledge, and these empires rose and fell with all that knowledge too. So same thing. Tower of Babel story. The EU replicates the Tower of Babel for their parliament building. How did that story end? So like, like how it ends, and it's not good. And yet these people still, it is like they're just like Pharaoh. They've got a debased mind. They've got the rebellion against God, and God is hardening their hearts, and they're doing things that are obviously going to lead to their own demise.
But I think I agree with that. I think the answer, though, is they're being given real power and money right now. That is their ticket into the door. So take, like, for instance, the Charlie Kirk situation. And let's just say in the very beginning, because he did take money from those who would seemingly be his demise.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think he knew it was going to turn out that way. It wasn't until he turned on the people that were giving him money until things went down that way. But I don't think your average person is aware enough to reject or deny the money and the power or the opportunity. People are so overcome with achievement and their own goals and wanting this to happen and wanting that to happen because, I deserve to have this massive record deal. I deserve to be in front of all these people. I deserve to be a household name. People have their own goals of where they want to see themselves, and they get blinded by that. So when someone comes along and it offers to infuse some money or some help or some power or some influence or some connections into that, most people will just take it because they're like, oh, well, this is great. This is perfectly aligns with what I want to accomplish and what I want to do. But if they were able to see it for what it was and they were listening to the Holy Spirit, they would be able to see further down the path and go, this probably isn't a good idea for me to make this decision. So to answer your question, I think most of these people, they don't realize at the outset that they're getting on a losing team, that they're getting into partnership with people who already lost the battle before and are ultimately going to lose the battle because the battle has already been won. It's so much more subtle. It's easy for us to see on the outside, but I think people could also remove themselves from situations in our own lives and go, why did you ever do this? Why did you ever do that? Why did you ever accept money from this person? Why did you ever? And it's, it's a little more nuanced than that. And that's why it's so important to crucify our flesh and our own wants and our own needs and to get them in line with what the Holy Spirit wants. Because if we don't do that, then when certain opportunities come along, we're going to jump right into bed with the wrong person, not realizing the overarching picture and the outcome that could happen in the end.
For sure. So I've got one more Lord of the Rings video, and then I've got one more, maybe Lord of the Rings adjacent movie video, and we'll finish up there. Check this out, Aaron.
Apparently the true ending of Lord of the Rings is that the elves they've saved the world enough times, all right? They're tired, they're done, they go off to the Grey Havens, over the seas, and are never to be seen again. The dwarves dig super deep into the earth. So deep that we don't know what happened to them anymore. We don't know where they are. Either they maybe discovered another Balrog and got killed, maybe they fell onto the center of the earth and went extinct, or maybe they found riches so immense that they decided to just stay there, living underground, deep underground forever. Hundreds of years pass, thousands of years pass, and the elves and the dwarves pass into mythology, and it's only humans left. No Ents, no hobbits, nothing left except people on Middle-earth. To the point where humans start to wonder if elves and dwarves even existed, or if they were ever just fairy tales, metaphors for other things or people or concepts. It's really sad to think about that, but it's also really interesting that Tolkien would do this because we all know Lord of the Rings. Well, like, how could you think these things never existed? They did, and they helped you. They helped you save the world. How could you forget what they are? And then it makes you question and think about the nature of our own history. How many things do we have in our own mythology and legend that we've just written off as fairy tales or decided, they were just like, this was just symbolic or representation of something else, It makes you question our own planet and culture and its history and legends. And that I find absolutely fascinating. It's almost like Tolkien performed Inception on humanity with this idea. It was a Rav who told me that. Right? He's not just a big pile of muscle, all right? He's got a sensitive soul and the mind of a philosopher.
The end was a little bit...
Mind of a philosopher while he's like raging in the bathroom.
No, but how about that? So that's the things that I often say about how, like, the mythologies we have and the legends, they're not facts, but they came from a true place.
Sure.
So how much of it's true and how much
And
of
some
it's...
of them might be.
Yeah, like, yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Like, well, we don't know exactly how much of it's true, but a lot of it could be true. But it's interesting the way it's presented. If a lot of this stuff is presented from a maybe that took place in like the antediluvian times. And then so what was real? Because it's interesting, even when the Bible talks about the ancient times, it's talking about the stuff that happened before the flood. Because all they really have is legends and oral traditions that are passed down after that. So like what actually happened? Like nobody really knows. So it's like the things that were true now, like later will be say like, oh, well, that was never true. Dragons were never a real thing. Giants were never a real thing. When you do read a little bit of the history, it's like they don't write about these things like they were mythologies. They write about them like they were true history and facts.
Yeah. Yeah, and what's interesting about that too is like the architecture that the dwarves and the elves were capable of.
Yeah.
Right? And then the dwarves disappeared into the center of the earth, which to not be seen again. And the elves took off to the Undying Lands.
Yeah.
Also to not be seen again.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like they're no longer here to create architecture like that. There's so many interesting parallels and all of that. But yeah, one of the things he was saying too kind of speaks to the storyline of The Hobbit, right? When Thorin, who was the rightful heir of the dwarf kingdom. Right?
Yeah, it wasn't Moria, but it was another one. I forgot exactly which one was called that where Smaug took over.
But like they know who they are and they're for the people. They go, they get help to take over their kingdom again. He gets it back, and then he's overcome with that same lust of money and power to the point of turning his back on his friends and everybody, forgetting why he even started everything to begin with and the whole purpose of everything to begin with, which, you know, goes hand in hand with their pursuit of chasing the riches. And I mean, in the storyline of The Hobbit, obviously he ends up redeeming himself and coming around. But yeah, it makes you wonder how much of this stuff, forget about that particular story, how much of this stuff comes from, because dude, I believe in the Hollow Earth theory to an extent. I do absolutely believe that there are civilizations and entire cities within the earth. Can you even imagine what some of them must look like? Because to have had the technology and the understanding to build some of these cave systems and some of these underground dwellings, you know, all you got to do is look at the outside and look at some of these old structures and realize that only now, and in some cases, even still now, we don't have the technology to build some of these monolithic structures or cut some of the stone the same way that they did. So there was obviously technology that we weren't aware of. So if some of these civilizations had the technology to burrow into the earth or find existing areas that were already hollow that might have been flourishing with life and water, maybe its own light source of some kind, man, I wish so bad in this lifetime I could witness something like that and see something like that. Just get a glimpse of it.
Oh, yeah, for sure. You know, and I made the connection. I think we talked about this probably a couple months ago, is that when I watched The Hobbit again, I was like, the way that they're describing the dwarves, and I guess I said, you know, like you can kind of make the correlations what Tolkien's trying to depict with these people who are kind of depicted as Semitic type people. And so then they're kicked out of their place by a dragon. Dragon burns their city down and then rests there. And then so then there's this diaspora of these people who have no homeland, and they're always having this longing to go back there. I was like, if that's not telling the story about the Romans destroying Jerusalem, I don't know what is. I think that's Tolkien again. This stuff is not lost on him. I think he put that in the movie. But here, actually, I changed my mind. I forgot I had one more Lord of the Rings video. It's a short one. This is just cool. Check this
No
out.
pun intended. It's a short one.
Yeah, it's a short one. Not like the Hobbits.
Sauron's armor wasn't made like a costume, it was literally forged. It was hammered, shaped, and assembled from real metal, and then heated and cooled until it held its final form. The helmet wasn't just designed to look evil, it was inspired by the shape of a rotting horse corpse. The patterns were transferred using a photochemical process, then acid etched directly into the metal, permanently biting into the surface. The chemical treatment darkened and damaged the armor, crafted into metal that looked like it had survived centuries of war. This was not made like a regular prop. It is true craftsmanship at the highest level.
Dude, the amount of time and energy that they spent on making that movie what it is, unbelievable. I remember when the extended editions came out on DVD after the movies were released, and they had like 30-something hours of behind-the-scenes footage. I watched every single minute.
Really? Nice.
Of every single one. And so yeah, his Peter Jackson's Weta Workshop, unbelievable, dude. All of that stuff handcrafted. Like, they spared no expense to make that stuff as authentic as possible.
Yeah, it's hard to imagine them making anything that's close to the scale and scope of that movie or that trilogy now. And yeah, that's just awesome, because you were talking about like buildings and things we don't see anymore. It's like stuff like that. I mean, like the time that it went into making something, because Sauron's not in the movie very much. That armor is barely shown. And you know, if they did that movie today, he would just be some kind of CGI garbage.
For sure.
Right? Like they would never make actual armor for that. But they had the right amount of like CGI, but they also use real practical effects. And I just thought that was cool, because I was like, dang, what they went into to make that is just, like I said, it's impressive. So I got one more video, and like I said, this is more like Lord of the Rings type adjacent, but it's still telling a very interesting story, in a story that's, let's just say, never ending.
Most people remember the never-ending story as a fantasy about imagination. But what if the real reason we remember it is because it asked us a question most of us never answered? It looks like a simple fantasy. A kid named Bastian steals a book, skips school, hides in an attic, and reads about a world called Fantasia that's being destroyed by something called the Nothing. Inside the book, a warrior named Atreyu is sent to stop it, and everywhere he goes, the same thing is happening. Entire parts of the world are just disappearing. No battle, no enemy to fight, just absence. But outside the story, Bastian is dealing with something more familiar. At the beginning, his father tells him to keep his feet on the ground, stop daydreaming, focus on what's real. So he reads the story like it has nothing to do with him. Until the movie breaks. Atreyu reaches the Southern Oracle and is told to pass a mirror to see his true self. And when he looks, he doesn't see himself, he sees Bastian. And that's the twist. Because now the story isn't just something Bastian is watching, it's something that's watching him back. We learn what the Nothing actually is. It's not a creature, it's what happens when people stop imagining. Fantasia isn't being destroyed, it's being abandoned by the one person who can save it, a boy, sitting in an attic, holding the story in his hands while it disappears. And at the center of it is the childlike empress who explains to Atreyu he can't believe that one little boy could be that important. And then the movie makes its final move. The empress turns past Atreyu, past the world, and looks directly at you, the one person who's been watching the movie the whole time. And she asks, why don't you do what you dreamed? And in that moment, the challenge Bastian is facing is the same one being handed to you. Because the Nothing doesn't stay in the movie. It's what happens when something in your life goes unanswered, something you already know you're supposed to do, and instead you just don't. And whatever that could have been just disappears. Don't you remember? You already know. You've already chosen. Why don't you do what you dreamed?
Boy, that movie really impacted that guy.
Yeah,
on
I
a
couldn't tell
very
without the weeping.
on a
But that's
very
pretty
deep
deep.
level.
That's pretty deep, though, right? If you really
So
think about it, you apply it to like not just imagination, but you apply it to like our walk with God.
for sure, no, I see the parallel. So basically, Atreyu is the spiritual avatar of Bastion,
Mm-hmm.
and I've
Well,
said that
yeah,
before.
because he's reading, because that's how when you read, like especially when you get like immersed in like a book, you have a protagonist, and like that's who you identify with.
Sure.
And so like his journey is like your journey. So like yeah, you're seeing yourself as Atreyu as you read the book.
I think for me personally, and I explain it this way to people when I talk about this. That's one thing that's helped me in my spiritual walk is trying to envision what my spiritual avatar is and doing. Not so much what it looks like, what my spiritual avatar looks like, but we are represented in the dimensions above us by our actions here. And that's what Jesus was trying to show us. And that's why he was trying to show us the power of love. So like down here, you get into a fight with someone, you punch them, you swing a sword, you shoot them, whatever, like that's winning a physical fight. But in the spirit realm, we swing our sword by forgiving people, by loving people, by showing grace to people, showing mercy to people, making the tough decision, sacrificing something, not doing something, overdoing something. And so yeah, there's a huge parallel there. And I think it's so important. That's one of the aspects that's so important to following Jesus is understanding that that's where the battle is really taking place. You know, just like Ephesians chapter 6, verse 12 says about the battle not being against flesh and blood. The sooner we understand that and the sooner we grasp that and live like that and understand that each one of our decisions has consequences in, you know, whatever world that is that Atreyu lives in, that's really the way that it works. And we're not insignificant. We're not at all. I was joking about it, but it is kind of beautiful how deeply it impacted that guy. But that's how I feel towards like my salvation and what the Holy Spirit has done for me and what Jesus has done for us towards my walk. It's transformational. And when we start seeing it that way, we start making different decisions in this realm, you know, the one that really doesn't matter because what we see here is an illusion.
Yeah, I guess it's like, you know, God can use a talking donkey to influence somebody, right? It's like, so he can use anything. So that's why, like,
sure,
that these movies might not necessarily be like The Lord of the Rings, might not necessarily be openly Christian. Like that movie, like most people would not get any kind of Christian connections, but the way that he's describing it to me makes sense.
For
Like
sure.
you're saying that it's presented with like a one layer of understanding where this is imagination land. Fantasia is where your imagination runs rampant or runs wild. But yeah, like what you're kind of describing is like this other dimension is the spiritual dimension. And so like that we as believers in Christ, like you can't enter the kingdom of God unless you're like a child. So you have to have that childlike faith and belief in something that you
Exactly.
can't see. So that's where like the imagination and the spiritual realm, kind of the two meet together. And so
Exactly.
in the way that, yeah, like the dad is saying, like, you need to be grounded. You need to like do normal things. Like you need to be grounded in this world. Like you need to study so you can get a job. And then, so then your imagination is just completely just left dormant or it's nothing. And so this destroys any connection with something more than the physical, the fleshly things you can see. So that's what I'm picking up out of this story, because then when you think about it like that, it's like that you're left where like, it's like love and hate are not opposite. You know, it's like, it's love. And then the opposite of love is like apathy. Because typically like you hate something because you feel so strongly about it, where like, it's not, you know, it's not obviously the same, but it comes from a place like this where somebody's been hurt. And so they do care. And this is why they hate. They turn to that emotion. But what's worse than that is apathy. It's nothing.
Yeah.
It's the
No, I
nothing.
agree.
And so like the horse, like Atreyu's horse is kind of like that. He could have got out of that mud pit, but he just stopped and he just let himself die. And like, that's the worst thing you do. And go back to that story, like in Lord of the Rings, where it's like that there's a lot of chances where you have to turn back or to quit. But if you just continue to go forward, right? If you pick up your cross daily and deny yourself and you continue to walk, you continue to follow Jesus, like it'll be okay at the end of this story.
Amen.
Like you'll be saved at the end of this story. And I started to think about that. I was like, yeah, that's really deep. And especially when you think about it, like that if like you get that message, like especially today, like people watching this podcast, they get that message. It's like there was something you believed in your heart that you could do one day. And then one day you just stopped. And like, you know what it is. And so you made a decision to stop. But like I said, as far as we're concerned, it's not too late. As far as like, what do you believe that God could do for you today? Like what you could do for God's kingdom today? Like you still have that opportunity. And the only way you can't fulfill that opportunity is just to stop.
Amen. I mean, the time is now. If you're hearing that message or seeing that message or seeing this message, it's not too late. Period. That's all I've got to add. You said it beautifully.
Well, it's like a situation where as Paul talks about that, like to the people that are holy, like all things are holy. So like you're thinking like, so you're seeing a story like that and you're gleaning like the good part of like the thing you could do with it. And it's not all about just always, even though we often do this to pick out the evil parts of these movies that are like really, really subtle, but it's like more like
some people do that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I've done it too, but I mean, it's saying, but sometimes sometimes I do catch myself to try not to be so cynical because like a message like that guy had where he was like touched very deeply about it. Like, that's a good message. I guess it's like, what do you do? Like, what is that thing that you're looking to go do? Now, obviously that could be an issue, but as a Christian, yeah, like we have like authority from the King. We have God's Holy Spirit, the same power that rose Christ from the dead lives in us. And it's like, so what couldn't you do that God wanted you to do? And the answer is nothing. The answer is nothing. And isn't that interesting? Like, well, there's nothing you couldn't do, but if you do nothing, the story ends. And it ends badly. But if you continue to believe and walk in faith, yeah, I think I think it's a very positive message. And I think that's why I still do enjoy movies. And I enjoy looking through the code of them. But at the same time, I do think a lot of the same things, even like the movie like The Matrix, where I know it's kind of an inversion, but I really think about like kind of when Neo does make his pivot to believing, he was willing to sacrifice himself to save someone. He was willing to lay his life down to save Morpheus, right? And then when he did that, he realized, wow, there's really nothing I can't do. Because he didn't he didn't die, but he was willing to die for a friend.
Yeah. Yeah, it was no longer
so you
about
see
him.
that, like, so like I can't help but think about that when I watch that movie. It's like, that's a good message, regardless if the movie is inherently good. And I think that maybe that's maybe like an idea of like looking at a glass as half full instead of half empty. Like that there is something where, yeah, God can use all these things together for our good, who are love him and called to his purpose.
Amen.
One quick thing though. I did think it was interesting that he goes to the Southern Oracle and he looks into some mirror. Like that is one of the weird parts in that movie where they have those kind of cherub looking things and he has to go through them and they shoot like the laser beams out the eyes. So that's the Southern Oracle.
Makes you wonder what's exactly in Antarctica. What's there?
Antarctica, man. Yeah. Maybe it's some kind of mirror dimension. Who knows? But anyways, guys, on that note, I really appreciate you guys watching. And if you guys want to watch these episodes early and uncensored, please consider supporting this podcast over on Patreon. Grab some merch if you like. These are some old shirts, but, we still got the Jesus Said to Be Hater shirts and hats. And I do have the trucker hats. If you look at the link in the description, you can get a JT Follows JC trucker hat, or you can get a customized one. You can say your initials follows JC, Jesus Christ. Also, if you want to support this podcast and get healthy, please consider supporting the sponsor of this podcast, Modern Roots Life. And if you're looking for social media coaching, you got a message, you don't know how to share it, please check out the Echoes of Truth Network. Regardless, guys, if you can't support the podcast in by any other way than just watching, listening, liking, sharing, subscribing, 5-star reviews, all that stuff, I appreciate you guys being here. I love you guys. See you next time.
JT's mixtape, now a show about history, faith, and truth, with the sound and the conversation we've never heard before. JT's mixtape, now there's a podcast that has exactly what we've been looking for all of us who will not compromise. Listen, JT created mixtape for us. Woo!